Hello and welcome back to the Anti-Aging Hacks podcast. Today, my guest is Radha Metro-Midkiff, who's the executive director for the Integral Yoga Institute of New York. She brings a lifetime worth of experience in yoga and business to the organization. She was born and raised in yoga, which was what was amazing to me, and I have a lot of questions for her. But she's been certified as both a Hatha Yoga and a Raja Yoga instructor by the age of 18. She teaches others how to live a mindful life. With that said, Radha, would you like to get thicker, fuller, and stronger hair? Then make sure to check out fullyvital.com. The team's come up with fantastic and natural products that help rejuvenate your hair, but also delay and reverse gray hairs. So if you're interested in better hair, go to fullyvital.com and use the code anti-aging-hacks for 15% off your order. Are you enjoying the shows on this channel? Then please make sure to hit the subscribe button down below, so you can get notified when we release new episodes. Our goal with this show is to help you and give you practical tips that you can use to slow down and reverse your aging so you can live and feel younger and live your best life. With that said, let's get on with the show. Welcome to the Anti-Aging Hacks podcast.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's great to be here today.
So I was researching some of your story and the background before you came on the show, and it seems like you've been involved in yoga and the yogic lifestyle for basically your whole life. So for the listeners, tell us a little bit of a glimpse of what that was actually like. What was your life like growing up in that environment?
So my parents actually started doing yoga and meditation before I was born and became vegetarians before I was born.
Yeah.
So I was automatically just born into a yogic family, which was amazing. And then we met Swami Satchidananda, who is the founder of Integral Yoga, when I was about 1 year old. And my parents were particularly drawn to Swami Satchidananda because he had a very integrative, interfaith approach to yoga. And one of the things about integral yoga, why we're called integral yoga, is because we actually put together 6 different branches of yoga, which you and I can talk about more as the podcast goes on. But that was one of the things that my parents really thought was so interesting about this particular path, not just the physical nature of yoga, but also the entire lifestyle. So when I was about, I guess, 6 years old, my parents moved us from Colorado, where I was born, to Connecticut so that we could go to the yoga school. So Integral Yoga was one of the few yoga schools in the United States at that time. Many of the more well-known yoga communities, they often sent their children away to school. So, some of them went to India and went to schools there. But there were only 1 or 2 ashrams where they actually had a school on site for the children. So I got to go to yoga school from first grade all the way through 12th grade. I graduated high school from yoga school.
Mhm.
And what this meant was we studied not only the physical postures, but we also learned to meditate, to chant. We studied the sacred texts, along with all the other things you get to study, right? Math, science,
Yeah.
English, all of those things. But what was pretty unique about my schooling was they really tried to integrate the philosophy and the practice of yoga into everything that we did. So if we were studying math, then there was always a philosophy, a lifestyle of yoga underlying whatever we were looking at and whatever we were studying. So it was really, there's probably just a handful of us in the world who were brought up in this like Western culture with this Eastern yoga philosophy and
Mhm.
upbringing. And so it was really, I think the older I get, the more I appreciate how unique it was and what that looked like to be able to meditate from the time you were 6 all the way through to today. And using those techniques, it doesn't mean that I've had the most easy, perfect life. We all have our karma. We all go through things. But what does happen is every single time I go through something big, I always have these incredible yogic practices to fall back on.
Okay. Sounds good. So you are the executive director of Integral Yoga Institute of New York.
Yes.
Tell us about what that means on a day-to-day basis. What does your job actually entail?
What doesn't my job entail? So we're a nonprofit, which means, we kind of all roll up our sleeves and do a little bit of everything. But we have about 75 classes a week. I oversee about 60 yoga teachers. My staff is like 10. We have a functioning ashram here. So I've got anywhere from like 10 to 15 ashramites that I'm kind of interacting with as well. Plus all the students, we're also living in New York City. We have a 100-year-old building that we've inhabited here for the last 54 years. We bought it in 1970. So there's lots of maintenance, repairs. I love my job because I never know what's going to come at me from day to day, from moment to moment. It could be the elevator broke that day, or we didn't have a teacher show up for class, or it could be something really exciting, like, we had a new group of, school kids come in and do meditation with us that day. So it's really everything. But I would say most people think, okay, you run a yoga institute, it must all just be like super low key and relaxing.
Yeah.
No, I have extraordinarily high stress levels at my job. However, I use the yogic techniques to really manage those stress levels so that, it's not about like eliminating the stress, it's how you deal with the stress that's really important, because we're never going to eliminate all the stress in life, right? That's not possible, nor would we want to. Stress is also exciting. It adds flavor and spice.
That is true. It makes you feel alive in certain ways.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk to you later on in the interview about short-term stress and long-term stress, PTSD, depression, all those things, how we can bounce back in life from all the hardships that we can or some may experience. But before we get into that, I'd love to touch on yoga specifically. So yoga was not known in the West for the longest time, and it was practiced in India primarily for thousands of years. But in the past 20, 30, 40 years, it's really blown up in popularity, and a lot of women seem to really enjoy doing it. Man, I don't know the stats, but I would say it's mainly women that are doing it. And so as we get on with the interview, I'd love to ask you about specifically the benefits of yoga as they relate to the human body, like the physical body itself. What have you seen, or not what have you seen, but what's proven by science?
Oh my gosh. I love talking about this because when I started doing yoga, I'm 51 now. So basically I started 50 years ago doing yoga.
Yeah, awesome.
And when we started, especially when I was growing up though, as a kid, nobody knew what yoga was. People didn't know, they kept saying like, what, yogurt? Like, what is that? What are you doing? But now, of course, yoga is so popular that there's so much focus on it. And also what I've seen is science start to catch up with yoga. So yoga is actually a 5,000-year-old science. We call it the science of yoga. And what makes it a science is if you do specific things, right? In science, like if you do this thing over and over again, you're going to get a prescribed result over and over again. You can just rely on that. And so yoga is similar in the fact that, like, if you do these practices, you're going to get a prescribed result. And now it's really cool because modern Western science is able to actually measure what's going on in our systems, in our brains, in our bodies. And so much of yoga starts with the physical postures. That's what most people are familiar with. And those physical postures can be just the physical posture, or it also can involve the breath. Right, breath is really important too. It can involve chanting, which is using the throat and the voice and the breath also to support that. But the amazing thing is that we understand that when you move your body in certain ways, you can release certain hormones. You can increase certain hormones. You can decrease certain hormones. So this is particularly relevant when we're talking about stress in our system. So we want to do things where we are able to decrease cortisol, decrease epinephrine, norepinephrine, and increase serotonin, dopamine, all of those oxytocin, all those really feel good chemicals in our brains. So somehow these ancient yogis knew that if you move your body in certain ways, you can facilitate the balancing of all of these different hormones in a positive way. One of my favorite, analogies, I think often people talk about chronic stress now in our society. So we were built as humans to be able to withstand stress. So, I always like to use the example, you're walking along in the woods, having a nice day. All of a sudden, a bear jumps out. So we have this fight, flight, and now freeze. We understand freeze is a response as well. Um, freeze often gets you eaten, but that's okay. So fight or flight. And we were built so that if you're fighting, right, you're going to start breathing really heavily. If you run, you're going to start breathing really heavily. So what happens is we have these beautiful muscles that exist in between our rib cage. And when we expand these muscles, what happens? They expand, they contract, they expand, they contract, and they're going to start releasing all of these chemicals and hormones that we want released into our system. So let's just say that first wave of stress hormones happens, right? The cortisol, the epinephrine. So we got to like run. We need that energy to be able to deal with the stress. But we don't want that energy. We don't want that those chemicals to remain constant.
Right.
We want them to flare up, and then we want them to calm back down. It is that action of running and the breath, right, that actually then tells our body, okay, we're safe. We can now reverse the stress response, or we're fighting, and then either we get eaten or we just, the bear ran away. So the problem with today's society is that we don't have that. We're experiencing the stress. It's like the bear is jumping out of the woods at us constantly, but we're not running, we're not fighting, and most of the time what we're doing is we're just freezing. And so those chemicals never, ever go down. So we're just finding that we're getting higher and higher and higher levels of these chemicals in our system. So one of the things that yoga does, particularly through breath and through movement, is that it helps reverse the stress response. One of the things that I think is absolutely mind-boggling and amazing is that 30 seconds of deep breathing can start to reverse the stress response. So if you think about how we are all chronically stressed, that means we're not even doing 30 seconds of proper breathing throughout the day. Not even 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And that's all you need is 30 seconds to start calming down your system. So for me, yoga is not something that, yes, we do have yoga classes and we get on a mat for 90 minutes and that's so beautiful and we have a great experience. But yoga is also that 30 seconds of deep breathing. It's the 1 minute of mindfulness. It is the, 3 minutes of just stretching your body. There's a beautiful thing that yoga does where when you stretch backwards and you bend forward and you twist side to side, and then you put your head below your heart, which also can happen in bending forward, that sequence in and of itself signals to your body, like from a neurological standpoint, like I am calm, I am good, everything's okay. And you can do that sequence in like a minute or 3 minutes. It doesn't have to be a big, hour and a half session. Now, that hour and a half session is awesome, that hour-long yoga class, because you obviously are going to get a full sequence of poses. One thing that I love about integral yoga too is that we really work on subtle poses and the subtle practices. So we do a lot of breath work. We do a deep relaxation. Swami Satchidananda used to always say, and we'll talk about this too, because I know you were kind of mentioning sort of the purpose of all of this yoga, right, is to achieve this equanimity and this balance. And so Swami Satchidananda used to say that our entire yoga class, every single pose, every breath we take, everything we do, it all leads to this beautiful moment in deep relaxation when we forget about the breath, we forget about the mind, we forget about the body, and we just rest in our own true self and our own inner peace just for a few short moments. And that's it. But those moments are like the most divine moments we will get all day long.
Yeah, I believe that because I've been in some of those moments in the past and they're utterly peaceful and utterly loving and utterly joyous. So I totally understand what you're saying. And if for people that have not experienced that, once you experience that moment, you're going to want to stay there for a lot longer. So
Yes, you are.
the challenge is how do you get back into that state as quickly as possible, because it does take a little bit of time. So then let me ask you, so obviously lots of benefits with yoga. I think science is catching up and proving that. Um, the challenge I've had with it in the past is that it's an hour and a half, and then you have to go to the class, and class is usually booked up, so you got to plan a few days in advance. Again, I'm making excuses here and telling stories, but I think overall yoga has been a very good positive for the world. Now, let's talk about the other side of yoga, which is the yogic life or the meditations or the breath work, and how how important is that aspect as it comes to living a life which is full of stress in the modern world?
So those are the things that I think are actually even somehow more important, because the physical aspect of it is very, very relevant. But as you said, that is something that often people have to go to a class and get, instruction on doing those poses. Whereas some of the more lifestyle aspects of yoga, you don't need a class. You can do them anywhere, anytime. And those are the ones that really support you through your journey throughout life. So in integral yoga, as I was mentioning, we have 6 different branches of yoga that we practice. So we have hatha yoga, that's the physical practices that we all think of as yoga. We have Raja yoga, that's the study of the science of yoga. Then we also have japa yoga, which is repetition of divine names. So that, in our sense, a lot of stuff we do in yoga is in Sanskrit. Sanskrit kind of is the same language that they use in Hinduism, but it actually predates Hinduism.
Mhm.
And they feel like Sanskrit is very close. It's a sound vibration that resonates most closely with the vibration that things are actually currently vibrating at. I know I'm not making that, I'm doing a very bad job of explaining that at this moment. But basically, like the name for tree, like trees vibrate at a certain frequency. So the name in Sanskrit for tree, that sound would be very close to the actual vibration of what that tree was vibrating at. And that's why we use Sanskrit. And that's why this japa repetition is so important, because these sounds actually can create different vibrations in our body, in our mind. Then we have karma yoga, one of my favorites, selfless service. I mean, that can be done anytime, anywhere, anyhow. For those of you who are maybe a little bit familiar with karma, I know that we talk about like accumulating good karma, accumulating negative karma. Karma yoga is one of the most efficient, fast ways to just sort of neutralize your karma, because through that action of selfless service, you're actually giving back without expecting anything in return. And then we have Yana yoga. Yana yoga is for, you got any like analyzers out there, like the people who are so in their head, it is impossible to get them out of their head. It's okay. Yoga said, we've got something for you too. Yana yoga is this analyzing, who am I? You're asking yourself these questions like, am I my body? Am I my hand? What happens if my hand gets cut off? Who am I? Am I a mother? What happens if my children die? Do I still exist, even without all these names? Am I Radha? If I change my name, who am I? So you're constantly asking these questions of who am I, and really looking at the universe and seeing that ultimately at the end of it all, you are something much greater, something much deeper, and something that is one with everything around you. That was that 4? And then we have bhakti yoga, which is the yoga of devotion. That is like, if you know any Catholics out there, right? Beautiful Catholic mamas who go and pray in the church. That's the bhakti yoga, right?
Mhm.
They are like the best bhaktis. But so that's anybody who goes and just really believes, that just rests in faith and love and devotion. That is also a whole form of yoga. And I am missing the 6th one. Let's see, we had Raja, Hatha, Japa, Bhakti, Karma, and wow, Radha, I'm totally just missing the last one.
It'll come
It'll
to
come to
you.
me.
I wanted to ask you about the karma, the karmic yoga. So what is the point of view of, I guess, the yogic teaching when it comes to karma? Where does karma come from? How do you inherit it? Does it come from your parents? Where do where does it come to you from? And then what are the things that you can do to maybe release it so you are free of the past, and you can flourish in every way possible. And then I guess maybe even future pacing. If you do pay down your karma or get rid of the karmic debt, what then happens to you as a result?
Ah, that's such a great question. Okay, so karma is just this idea that every action has a reaction. That's it. So it's not even so much like this idea that there is good karma, bad karma, although people use those terms a lot.
Mhm.
Karma is actually just sort of neutral. It just means you did something somewhere along the way. There's going to be reaction, right? So, in terms of yoga, there is a belief that we reincarnate. So we can reincarnate from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime. You can believe in reincarnation and follow karma, or you can just set that part aside if that doesn't resonate with you. That's okay too. But the idea of karma is just that as we're going through life, as we're going through our experiences, we are going to have an effect on people, effect on the world around us. And that effect is going to have a positive or negative charge to it. So I'm here with you right now. We are interacting. We're having an effect on each other. So probably right now we're creating a little bit of good karma because we're bringing positive yogic things to the world. However, if I turn around and you may have seen something moving behind me, that's my dog. If I turn around and yell at my dog afterwards, I'm probably going to create a little bit of a negative effect. That dog is now going to feel bad. He's not going to know why I yelled at him. So everything that we do in the world has some sort of effect. These effects then catch up with us somewhere along the way. So if I turn around and I hurt someone today, I'm not necessarily instantaneously going to feel the result, but at some point there's a karmic debt that's happening that I'm going to have to sort of pay that debt. So I'm going to have to clear that experience. One of
Mm.
the beauties of karma yoga, like I said, with this selfless service, is that you don't have to know what's going on, right? You don't have to know, like, oh, I did this in a past lifetime, and therefore this is happening to me. You can just serve and serve and serve selflessly and just know that you are cleansing any like karmic debt you may have in the universe. So once we clear all this karmic debt, which for most of us takes many, many, many lifetimes, because of course you cannot be alive without creating karma for most of us. However, there is a certain stage that we get to of enlightenment that the sages and talk about, that once we get to the certain stage of enlightenment, then we no longer create karma because everything we do is with a sense of selflessness. Everything we do is with a sense of knowing that we are one with the universe, we're one with the divine, and everything around us is in harmony with that. Does that
Yeah,
does that
yeah,
land? Does
yeah.
that make sense?
That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. So let me ask you something else. I want to ask you a few more follow-on questions on this, but first of all, so you named the five different types or the six different types of yoga. And then if you were to talk about what that yogic lifestyle looks like, because it's a lifestyle, right? Doing yoga is actually only one part of it. What does that lifestyle look like for a beginner? Like, what are the practices that you do on a day-to-day basis, and how much of this time of your day does it take up?
So I would say certainly for me at this point, because I've studied yoga my whole life, everything is yoga. Everything
Hmm.
I do is
Yeah.
yoga. So the way that I'm being here with you is important to me because I'm being present and mindful of the space I'm here with you. I'm not checking my phone. I'm not trying to look out the window. I'm not doing anything. I'm just being mindful and present with you. And that's true of everything that I do throughout the day. Even when negative things come at me, I look at it with a yogic attitude. So I use the philosophy and the teachings. So one of the most beautiful teachings that I love so much, there's two that are so beautiful. They're in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. One is called Pratipakshibhavana, taking negative thoughts and turning them into positives. So I wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh God, my back hurts. This is going to be a horrible day. Well, what do you think you're going to manifest for yourself if you wake up and say this is going to be a horrible day? So instead, the yoga practice is, okay, I'm going to turn that around. Oh, I can feel my back today. I wonder how I can use this experience to serve, to love, to be present with everyone, to be present with my own body. How can I use this experience to be kind to my body today because it's experiencing something that perhaps is negative? So it's like switching everything around. If you're like, God, that guy's such a jerk, then just immediately catching it and saying, ooh, okay, how about that guy is doing the best he can today with what he has available to him.
Mm.
So how do we get to the point where we can like look at some of this stuff? Oh, the other one I love, I'm sorry, I was going to tell you one more, is there's something called the 4 locks and 4 keys. It's how we deal with all the people in our life. So they say you respond with friendliness towards the happy, compassion towards the unhappy, disregard for the wicked. I don't really choose to use that word wicked. It's a weird, antiquated word, but just, somebody doing wicked deeds or having a wicked attitude. Um, and then delight in the virtuous. So those are the 4 ways that we can deal with all the different scenarios in our life. And they seem so simplistic, but when you really start to practice them in your day, you'll start to realize like, not so much they encompass people, but they encompass every single engagement you'll have with people. So
Mhm.
either that person's happy, yay, I'm so delighted they're happy, I'm going to enjoy their happiness. This person's doing something really harmful or hurtful to me right now, I'm just going to disregard it. I'm not even going to give it any energy. I'm just going to be like, okay, you're clearly having a moment. I'm just going to be, disregarding what you're doing. The way that we learn to practice these is through the experience of meditation. So meditation is training our mind to stay focused on one thing. It's also controlling the mind. I don't like to say control because people say control like it feels very I'm controlling something. But it is a useful word in the sense that like when my thoughts are thinking something, if okay, let's say I want to switch my thought from a negative to a positive, I have to have some level of control over my mind to be able to do that. I can't just, have my mind just be like, no, I want to think negative thoughts. I want to say that guy's a jerk. You have to be able to be like, no, mind, stop. We're going to stop right there. We're going to shift it around and we're going to think something positive. That is a brain training. You have to train your brain to do that. It doesn't just naturally happen.
Mhm.
So it's in the practice of meditation that we learn how to do that. Now, the yoga, the hatha yoga, the physical practices that most of us are familiar with yoga. One of the main purposes of that hatha yoga is to prepare our bodies so that we can sit comfortably in meditation. It is very difficult to meditate when your body doesn't feel good, right? And you're not comfortable. You're going to be thinking about like, oh, my hip hurts. Oh, my back hurts. Oh, I should crack my neck. So in order to be able to train the mind, you have to have a body that can sit comfortably. And so the physical postures are like, let's get our body aligned. Let's get it healthy. Let's make sure all of our organs are working properly. And then we can sit in meditation. And the purpose of meditation is not to sit in meditation. So often people think like that's the point, right? Like, oh, you meditate as if that's the end goal. No, the whole
Mhm.
purpose of meditation is so we can then get up and walk through our day, practicing yoga, taking that meditation, that peace that we just experienced, and bringing that peace with us throughout the day, and never, ever, ever letting anything disturb our peace.
Mhm.
That is truly the goal of yoga.
That's fascinating you say that. The one challenge that I myself have had, and I've heard others complain about as well, is when you wake up in the morning and you just have a drink of water, nothing else, you don't check your phone, not your Instagram, nothing, not your email, and you go sit in meditation. It can be easy, right? And if you do some breath work before, that's fine too. It can be easy. And then the world hits you, right? The emails are flying, people are
Oh
mad,
yeah.
you're driving in, somebody cuts you off. How does sitting in meditation in the morning actually translate to you being more calm during the day? And is that a process? And if so, how long does it take for that to really become who you are?
Oh gosh, I wish there was just an easy answer for that. Like, if you do this for
Yeah.
this amount of days. Um, Yes, it absolutely helps the process. That is one of the main focuses of meditation. And science now absolutely 100% can back up that when you meditate, you will have less stress. Now, I should rephrase that. You will deal with your stress better. You won't
Mm,
have less stress. We all have
yeah.
stress, but you will deal with your stressful situations better and more successfully. Um, and because this is called anti-aging, right? We should wrap this up in there too. Like, what is
Yes.
the number one thing that ages us? Stress,
Trust. Yeah.
right? So if you can reduce your stress, guess what? You're going to look better. You're going to feel better. You're going to be more vibrant. You're going to be more alive. So it is in that meditation that's so key. Now, for those of you who are just beginning, don't try to meditate for long periods of time. I always love Swami Satchidananda gave us such a simple formula. He said, meditate 30 minutes 3 times a day. It is so hard to meditate 30 minutes 3 times a day after day after day after day. It
Mhm.
sounds so easy. And I know very few people who actually are able to pull that off day after day after day, myself included.
Mhm.
So, but it doesn't need to, because if you meditate even for 3 minutes once a day, that's better than no meditation. So any little bit of meditation you can get throughout the day is going to be better than nothing. And if you find that right now it's too hard to stay focused or you can't maintain that space for longer than 3 minutes, that's okay. Just start with 3 minutes.
Mhm.
You will feel better after 3 minutes. It's 1 minute. You'll feel better after 1 minute. It's just, that's the science.
Yeah. And so then let me take this one step further. The goal of meditation is to have equanimity in your life and peace and tranquility. But also, some people talk about enlightenment. Some people talk about, moving past the everyday struggles of humankind and really becoming more of the enlightened being, so to speak, more somebody who's less worried about the day-to-day happenings around them and more just relaxed and calm. What does that mean to you, and what does that path even, what does that entail to go on that path?
So I think like an important little point to make here is that the yogis believe that we already have equanimity. We already are
Okay.
true peace. We
Yeah.
already are calm. But it's all the things that happen throughout our day. So it's just like they use the example of a lake. So imagine a crystal clear mountain lake, right? There's no wind, there's nothing. It's just like glass. It's so beautifully calm and you can see your reflection so beautifully in the lake. Well, now imagine that you take a pebble and you drop it into the lake. Now you're going to take a bigger rock and drop it into the lake. And then you're going to start throwing lots of pebbles in the lake. Are you going to be able to see your reflection anymore? No, you're
Mhm.
going to be like, this is a chaotic, crazy lake. I can't see myself. But the truth is we are still that pure peace, that pure um, unity with everything around us. But it's all the things that happen to us during the day that start to cloud the lake. A mirror is a great image too. Like, you're looking at yourself in the mirror, and if it's a nice, clean mirror, then you're like, oh, I'm so happy. I'm so beautiful. Well, imagine the mirror is warped or it's got soap scum on it or whatever. You look in the mirror and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm cloudy. I can't see myself. Well, you are still there. You still exist just as clear as you were before. It's just the reflection in the mirror that got cloudy. So we're always trying to get that reflection to be clearer so we can see ourselves again, see our true selves. And that's why the calming of the mind, the awareness of the oneness, like we were talking about with the Yana yoga, who am I? Who am I? Who am I truly? If you just keep asking yourself, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? And you keep asking that question over and over, eventually you get to the wisdom and the knowledge that you are one with everything. There is no separation. And
Mhm.
this is, of course, if we look at science now and we're looking at like atoms and we break down atoms and we break them into smaller and smaller and smaller particles and all that, they still know that there is this huge amount of energy that exists. Most of the universe is made up of space. Well, space doesn't have a beginning and an end, right? Space is just like this flowing thing. So we think that if I set my hands, right, I've got this hand, I think it's solid. I'm going to set it on the table. I think this table is separate from me. On an atomic level, no, it's not like the table's solid and my hand's solid. All of those atoms, all that space is just flowing in between each other. And so it's only in our minds that we think there's all this separation. When we truly understand like that unity and oneness with everything, we realize there is no separation. We're all just space and we're all connected through this energy. And that's the purpose of the practices, is so that we're really not just aware of it in here, but we're really aware of it in our hearts and our minds. And every day we can embody that.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Okay, so I have one more question for you on this topic. As when we're kids, I think most kids just enjoy a carefree existence, right? Parents take care of every need possible. You get the ice cream, you get the toys, you get everything you need, get the Barbie. But as we start to get older, especially in our 30s and beyond, you start to really understand that life comes with highs and it comes with lows. And sometimes highs could be multi years long, and the lows could be multi years long. So you could be in a bad position in life, or what you perceive as bad position in life for many, many years, and then it turns around. And people also talk about this is you think you're so happy in life, wait for the next season, right? There's always seasons, there's winter, spring, summer. And so, first of all, I guess philosophically, why do you think people experience such downs, such long periods of maybe not being well or just challenges in life? Where is that from?
So I think like this is multifaceted. So first of all, it's the true source of it is our identity with anything that is transient. The body, the mind, it's all transient. One of the chants that we say a lot and we repeat in yoga is, I am not the body, I'm not the mind, the immortal self I am. The minute we start to identify with the body or the mind, then we are going to detach from this peaceful space. So everything in yoga is like, get back to the peace, get back to the peace, get back to the peace. Don't identify with the mind, don't identify with the body. Children naturally know that, right? They're closer to that peaceful state. They understand that their true nature is peace and joy. As we grow up, we start layering stories, beliefs, we get indoctrinated with information. Our minds get more out of control. We start identifying with everything around us. We start saying, I am, I'm a woman, I'm a American, I'm a yogi, I'm a this, I'm a that. And the more identities that we put on ourselves, the more we separate ourselves from others, and the more we start to believe that I am these things. Um, and some of these things are, look incredibly real. They seem very like, are you crazy, Radha? Of course I'm a woman. Of course I'm a man. Of course I have this, identity. But the truth is we are not our bodies. We are not our minds. We are part of this immortal self. And the more we can identify with that, then the more these seasons we stop going up and down quite so big. And that's the equanimity they talk about. Like these waves that you're surfing, like it's not, you don't want to get rid of the waves entirely. The waves come.
Mhm.
But the idea is, Swami Satchidananda would always say, become a great surfer. Learn how to surf those waves. Don't get rid of the waves, because guess what? Surfing is fun.
Mm.
So enjoy those ups and downs, but realize that is not your true self. That is not who you are. It is just the experience you're having. I mean, think about how much we love to watch sad movies or scary movies or thrillers or movies that like give us some sort of reaction. Well, if we can start to see our life sort of like that movie, whereas it's just a fun experience we're having, then we have less, our mind and our equanimity is not getting as disturbed by it, because we're like, oh, it is just a movie. This is just um, manifest existence playing itself out. But we
Mm.
are truly part of the unmanifest inside, and that's truly who we are.
Ah, okay. This is very interesting. I believe before we started the interview, I mentioned I'd read a book by Michael Singer, and he's written multiple books, but this one was called The Untethered Soul. And one of the things he talks about in the book is the concept of sanskaras, which are just things that are in you that get troubled, or you get troubled by things that are happening outside you, and therefore you perceive them to be negative in some way or bad for you, and therefore you react or you feel a certain way about it. And of course, with longer time or phases of life where you're not happy for a long time, that can continue, that, the thought or the emotion can continue for a long time. And so he talks about getting rid of the samskara because the life is happening as it is. And if you can stop reacting completely to what's going on, then it doesn't matter. It is what it is, right? And I think some of that, I think you're saying as well, which is the become the equanimity. So you're not going up and down like a crazy person. The highs are amazing and you want to enjoy the highs, but lows, maybe you can just be more relaxed and not have to worry about that as they come. So, um, in terms of the practices that you might do, he's mentioned a few that I read in his book. One was chanting, which you talked about. The other was meditation. One was also changing your mind to a more positive. All three, which you've actually already talked about. And so, if you are going through a phase of life which you're not completely happy with, in your opinion, what can you do? What should you do? Not should, but what can people do to maybe feel better or soothe themselves?
So I think even just the awareness that, again, just that repetition of I'm not the body, I'm not the mind.
Yeah,
Because here's the thing is like, I mean, just because we're one with everything doesn't mean everything's going to be what we perceive as good or pleasant all the time.
yeah,
Um, I could get into an accident tomorrow. My arm could get cut off. That's a very real thing. That's not just me like imagining like, oh, I'm not the body. Like this body could experience something that would be very challenging. The only way for me to not get so wrapped up in it is to realize that it is my body. It is not me. It is easier in some ways, I think, for people to recognize that with their body because our bodies change. We can see our bodies changing very easily. I can change my hair color. All right. So now I'm brunette. Tomorrow I bleach my hair, I'm a blonde. I can see very easily, oh, I'm clearly not my hair because yesterday I was a brunette, today I'm a blonde, and
mhm,
I'm still the same. When it comes to our minds, it becomes a little bit more subtle and it can be more difficult. Um, I too have gone through severe periods of my life of extreme depression, anxiety, PTSD, and you are not going to escape these experiences just because you do yoga or just because you're a yogic person. The difference is utilizing the practices to get yourself out of them. I truly believe like I would not be here alive today if it was not for me going back to my yoga practices because obviously I was raised in this in my 20s and 30s. Did I practice as regularly? Absolutely not. I had some really difficult things happen to me and I started to identify with them. Um, One thing that's just, a really clear example is I worked on Wall Street during September 11th, and I was standing on the street when the first building fell. And then I ended up working like right there at Ground Zero for like a year
wow,
afterwards. I ended up with severe PTSD. I mean, I just could not imagine the human suffering, everything that I was seeing every day, the number of people that were just like died within instant. Um, and Swami Satchidananda, luckily, was still alive then. And I spoke to him several times, and he was very clear about it. He said, you either have fear or you have faith. There's no in between. And so what I saw in that was like, I have to have faith that everything that's happening, everything I'm seeing right now is first of all playing out for a reason that I may not understand. I don't have to understand it. Faith is not about understanding up here. Faith is about realizing that you are part of something greater and that everything is this energy that can change into different forms, right? Most of us, I mean, all of us are going to go through life and we're going to lose people. People are going to die. in our life, and it is going to be painful, and we are going to grieve. It doesn't mean that we just gloss over that and say, oh no, we're all eternal souls, we're not going to feel anything.
Mhm.
Well, we wouldn't be human. Like humans have experiences. That's the whole point of us being here in these human forms, is to say we're going to have highs, we're going to have lows. But do I remember in this high and this low that I am something more than that, that I am the eternal peace, I am the eternal wisdom, I am the eternal knowledge, I am the true self. And that's the key, I think, to really making it through these spaces. And the practices, again, you can't I think it's very difficult to get to that space if you're not doing the meditation, because again, your mind will just go haywire. And again, it's harder to, in my experience, to separate yourself out from your mind than your body. Um, but you are no more your mind than you are your body. You're no more your thoughts than you are your body, right? So let's just say I burp, right? Am I a bad person? I may in that moment think like, whoa, body, that was bad. Like, okay. But it was just an expression of my body. I don't go, I'm somebody who burps all the time. I am a burper. I am a burp. No. But if we think something negative about ourselves in our mind, and we start to identify with that, and that's harder for us to separate out from. So I think that's why the meditation can be so important as a practice. Now, let's just say you're not good at meditating. You don't know how to meditate. It's too hard. That's when things like the chanting can be really powerful, because chanting can actually move energies and sounds through our system and can put us into states that we don't have to consciously think about, and it disengages our mind. Whereas meditating is still sort of engaging the mind. So chanting can be really powerful for people, but mostly, I mean, there's 6 branches of yoga because we can follow all 6 branches, but also you may resonate more with one branch than another. You may decide, I can't meditate, I can't sit still, I can't do all that other stuff, but I can serve. I can go out and just serve people selflessly.
Mm,
That I
mm.
can do. Or I can't do physical postures. Maybe you're in a wheelchair and you like literally cannot do some of the physical postures. You can still chant, you can still meditate, you can still study spiritual books. Like there's so many things that you can do. Um, and yoga is not uh, limited. It's almost like limitless. And no matter who you are, whatever you're doing, wherever you are in life, whatever you're experiencing, there's some gift that yoga can give you to bring
Mhm.
you closer to that state of peace and awareness of your true self.
Got it. Okay, thank you, Radha. We're coming up on time here, but I think maybe one last question for you would be, and you were just explaining this, but for the beginner to kind of incorporate some of these practices into their life, be that you could maybe recommend do 20 minutes of meditation a day, which I'm doing twice a day now, and I've gone
Yeah.
back and forth on meditation, but I understand how important it is, and I am determined to continue at least 20 minutes morning and evening, and possibly more as well, and maybe do a longer one in the evening. But if there are certain simple things that people could start to incorporate in their daily life to suit themselves, to be better, to not be as frazzled from the world that's around us, what might those simple tips be before they get into the more advanced practices?
So I love breathing, right? Breathing is something we do all the time, but we do it very unconsciously.
Hmm.
I could be in the middle of an argument with you and I can breathe and engage my breath to calm me down, right? That's not something that I have to go sit somewhere to do, or I have to have special tools or equipment or anything like that. Breath is there with you all the time. So I always tell people, start with your breath. Just, put your awareness at the tip of your nose and just be aware of your breath going in and out. You don't even have to control it. Just like have the awareness, oh, my breath is going in and out. And then slowly start to increase, the depth. So you're inhaling and exhaling at the same rate. And then eventually you can have the exhalation be twice the length of your inhalation. It's such a natural, gentle practice and brings, to me, probably the biggest bang for your buck because it's can be done anywhere, anytime. Waiting in line, I love breathing when I'm waiting because I hate waiting. It's like waiting is like my personal like frustration, which is
Mhm.
means, the universe gives me lots of opportunities to wait. But I love breath because it's something you can do anytime, anywhere. And then of course, don't worry about 20 minutes. Start with 3. That's all you can do. That's great. And then Om, just chant Om. Om is like the sound of the whole vibration of the universe. So it's just been like 3 minutes just chanting Om, Om, Om. That's all you have to do. And if you just start with those simple things, then, just allow the benefits and feel the benefits of those, then you can slowly go deeper and deeper.
Fantastic, Radha. Thank you so much for coming on the Anti-Aging Hack Show. This has been a really good conversation. People that might want to follow you or learn more about you, where can they go to get you more information about you?
Oh, absolutely. Well, like I said, most of what I do is serve Integral Yoga Institute. So you can go to iyiny.org and find out all about Integral Yoga and what we do here in New York City. And also, we have lots of workshops and classes online. So really anywhere you're listening, you can join us for something.
Perfect. So check them out online, but if you're in New York City especially, then go check them out in person.
Yeah.
Okay, Radha, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.